am James Izimoha, and you're watching A News Weekend. Here are your top stories. Russian President Vladimir Putin issued an apology to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev over the crash of Azal flight in Aktau. Political crisis in South Korea continues as thousands gather in Seoul demanding the resignation of impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. NASA's Parker Solar Probe has reached a historic milestone by completing the closest approach to the Sun ever made by humanity. Russian President Vladimir Putin has apologized to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev over the recent Aktau plane crash, which left many families grieving and raised serious questions about safety in the region's airspace. The tragic incident occurred on December 25th when Azerbaijan Airlines passenger plane traveling from Baku to Grozny suffered external physical and technical interference while flying through Russian airspace. The interference caused the crew to lose control of the aircraft, forcing an emergency diversion to Aktau, Kazakhstan. Thanks to the pilot's extraordinary courage and professionalism, the plane was able to land, though not without casualties and significant damage. President Ilham Aliyev noted that the aircraft's fuselage was riddled with holes and debris from the external interference injured passengers and crew mid-flight. Survivors' accounts and evidence from the scene confirmed the presence of external, unauthorized interference. During the call, the two leaders discussed the urgent need for a comprehensive and transparent investigation. President Putin extended his condolences to the victims' families and promised cooperation to identify and hold those responsible accountable. Both leaders stressed that no effort will be spared to ensure justice, including the provision of compensation to affected families. President Aliyev informed his counterpart that Azerbaijan has already formed an international team of experts to thoroughly investigate the incident. Both leaders pledged to keep the public informed of the investigation's progress, underlining the importance of transparency in this highly sensitive matter. The team investigating the Azal plane crash in Aktau, which left 38 people dead, will examine what kind of rocket struck the plane. This is according to the Azerbaijani transport minister. Aviation experts have also been invited to join the inquiry.
The team investigating the Azal plane crash, along with aviation specialists invited for this case, will examine what kind of weapon, or rather what kind of rocket, caused the plane crash in Aktau, according to Azerbaijan's Minister of Digital Development and Transport, Rashad Nabiev. He noted that Azerbaijani and Kazakh officials have spoken to the survivors and witnesses to gain a clearer understanding of the cause.
During our visit to survivors, including those with Russian citizenship, all of them, without exception, stated that they heard 3 blast sounds when the aircraft was above Grozny city. They indicated that these sounds came from outside, suggesting there was an external impact on the plane. As a result of the blast, one of the flight attendants sustained injuries to her hand, while another woman suffered injuries to both her hand and leg. In other footage, holes are visible on the plane's wing, along with various signs of damage inside the plane, particularly in its interior parts, caused by what appears to be an impact from sharp external objects. Our investigation team, along with aviation specialists invited for this case, will now examine what kind of weapon, or rather, what kind of rocket, was used.
Touching upon other versions of what could have led to the crash of the plane, Mr. Nabiev said that some needed further investigation. However, most of them are easily refuted by the evidence at hand. For example, experts already concluded that there was external interference.
Bildiğiniz kimi kütləvi informasiya vasitələrində ilk saatlarda müxtəlif informasiyalar.
As you know, in the initial hours following the incident, various pieces of information were leaked in the media. Among the leaked claims was the suggestion that the plane may have been struck by birds. However, the initial conclusion reached by experts is that the debris found on the ground and the witness statements indicate that there was external interference.
Burada kənar müdaxilə olub, amma indi söhbət gedir ki,
The current question is what type of weapon caused this external interference?
olub
If you paid close attention to the information provided by Kazakh officials, they referred to a claim made by the air traffic controller in Rostov that the explosion might have been caused by an oxygen cylinder.
Rostovda olan dispetcher tərəfindən verildiyinə istinad.
We believe this claim needs to be thoroughly investigated first to confirm whether this information was indeed given or not.
Bu məlumat verilib.
We also believe that the information originating from Rostov might have been shared by an interested party.
Bu maraqlı tərəfindən verilən bir
Furthermore, as I already mentioned, the evidence contradicting this claim includes the fact that there were 3 separate explosions and that these explosion sounds were clearly external.
kənardan gəldiyini.
Azerbaijan Airlines plane flying from Baku to Grozny tragically crashed near Aktau, Kazakhstan on December 25th. The crash led to the death of 38 people, including both pilots, and left 29 passengers injured. While the cause was initially unclear, preliminary investigations now strongly suggest the involvement of a surface-to-air missile.
Earlier, A-News spoke to military and aviation expert Konstantin Krivolap about potential causes for the crash of the Embraer 190 aircraft.
These planes are equipped with very reliable General Electric engines. Both the engines and the aircraft undergo strict certification procedures in accordance with ICAO standards, the international organization dedicated exclusively to aviation safety. This is their sole area of focus. They develop standards and regulations, which countries then implement. Now, to obtain certification under ICAO standards, an aircraft and its engines must pass what are known as bird strike tests. For example, I've personally conducted bird strike tests on the Ruslan aircraft. We tested the cockpit to determine whether it could withstand the impact of a duck weighing 1.8 kilograms or goose, which are quite large birds, and whether they could break or shatter the cockpit windows. Similar tests are conducted on engines for bird resistance. On special test benches, the carcasses of ducks or other birds are launched into the engines. The process essentially resembles a meat grinder. Thus, attributing engine failure to a bird strike is difficult for me to accept. As someone familiar with how these tests are conducted and the types of birds involved that could theoretically shut down a General Electric engine, I simply cannot imagine it. Therefore, I would avoid speculating about the potential causes of the accident until we have more objective findings from an official investigation.
The courage, dedication and heroism of the Baku-Grozny flight crew saved more than 20 people's lives. A stewardess and a passenger shared their account of the final moments of the tragic flight.
There were 2 explosions outside the plane and shrapnel fell into the plane's cabin. These are the words of Aydan Rahimli. She is a stewardess of Azerbaijani Airlines, one of the survivors of Baku-Grozny flight.
The plane was in good condition. There was no malfunction. It attempted to land at Grozny airport once, but it didn't succeed. It tried a second time, but again, it was unsuccessful. On the third attempt, the plane was struck from the left side. At that moment, oxygen masks dropped down.
After the explosion, chaos engulfed the plane cabin and the passengers panicked. Stewardess Aydan tried her best to calm them, but soon her fellow flight attendant got wounded.
We were trying to calm the passengers and telling them not to unfasten their seatbelts. Then we heard the sound of an explosion and a second strike occurred. After the second strike, our flight attendant, Mr. Zulfagar, was injured in the arm. I provided first aid and gave him water. Those moments were very stressful because he could have lost a lot of blood, and it was necessary to stop the bleeding.
And that is when emergency landing was announced by pilots and lead flight attendant Hakuma started to give instructions to cabin crew and passengers.
Lead stewardess asked, "Do you know what to do as a first aid?" And I said yes. She said, "Okay, then we are making an emergency landing, but it should have been a normal emergency landing. We did not know what's going to happen." Ms. Hakuma explained to the passengers all the necessary information about the situation. She said, "Everything is going to be fine."
Aydan says she was at the very back of the plane, at the place of service of flight attendants. In the last minutes, she only saw the passengers who were in the brace position, according to emergency landing rules.
The plane continued to fly, searching for a place to land. It wasn't working. It kept ascending and descending. The most tragic moments were at the very end. At that moment, the plane started rapidly descending. We were all seated, removed the mask, and tightened our seatbelts. I lowered my head and sat in the brace position. The plane was still descending. Then I was thrown to the right, then to the left. The seatbelt held me in place. When I opened my eyes, the plane was upside down.
Seatbelts fastened stewardess to her seat and she stayed there until very end. Aydan Rahimli says they did not know where they landed. When she got out of plane, people were already there to help, and it was then Aydan heard that they are in Aktau, Kazakhstan. Stewardess of Azal says it is a miracle that half of the people survived the crash. One of these survivors already recorded his last-minute prayers. Passenger Supankul Rahimov said he had begun to recite prayers and prepare for the end after hearing the bang.
I wasn't even sure that I would stay alive. I already thought that it was all over. After the bang, I already got my mindset that something bad would happen now, because it was clear that the plane had received damage. I was conscious when I felt the impact. I was being thrown back and forth. It all lasted for a few seconds, and then silence. Everything was quiet, and I realized that was it. We had landed.
Eventually, Baku-Grozny flight had landed. For some, it was the last destination, while for the others, Aktau will be a place of rebirth to the second life.
An Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer 190 aircraft faced tragic ordeal during its flight from Baku to Grozny. What began as a routine journey ended in disaster near Aktau, Kazakhstan, after the plane encountered suspected missile damage and electronic interference. Despite the challenges, the heroic actions of the crew saved 29 lives, making their efforts a beacon of hope amidst the tragedy. International media agencies highlighted the extraordinary bravery and skill demonstrated by the flight crew in the face of catastrophic circumstances.
The Embraer 190 aircraft, operated by Azerbaijan Airlines, was on a routine flight from Baku to Grozny, Russia's North Caucasus region, on 25th December. The journey, however, turned into a dramatic and tragic ordeal when the plane likely sustained damage from a Russian Pantsir S-1 air defense system. Denied permission to land at Grozny Airport and nearby airports in Makhachkala and Mineralny Vody, the Azerbaijani passenger jet found itself in an increasingly dire situation. Adding to that, electronic warfare systems deployed by the Russian side reportedly paralyzed the aircraft's communication systems, leaving the crew with minimal support. The flight was redirected to Aktau Airport, 450 kilometers, 280 miles, east of its intended destination, what seemed almost an impossible task. Piloting a damaged aircraft, navigating hostile skies, and battling the elements, Captain Igor Kshniakin and First Officer Alexander Kalyaninov displayed extraordinary professionalism and composure. Flight Radar 24 data revealed erratic vertical speed fluctuations in the final 74 minutes of the flight, underscoring the crew's struggle to maintain control. Aviation expert and former pilot Dan Bubb, in his interview to Newsweek, praised the pilot's ability to transform a compromised aircraft into a heavy glider, steering it along the best possible glide path under immense pressure. Canadian aviation specialist Brian Murray echoed these sentiments, highlighting their quick thinking and adaptability, which turned what could have been a complete disaster into a moment of heroism. Despite their valiant efforts, the long and arduous journey ended in tragedy as the plane crashed near Aktau, Kazakhstan, following a desperate attempt to execute an emergency landing. The heroic actions of the crew, however, saved 29 passengers from certain death. A day of mourning was declared in Azerbaijan on the 26th of December to honor the victims of this catastrophe. Across the country, a minute of silence was observed, and motorists honked their horns in a collective tribute. Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister Kanat Bozumbayev confirmed 38 fatalities and ongoing rescue efforts at the crash site. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev deployed a medical evacuation aircraft and assigned a government commission led by the Deputy Prime Minister to investigate the incident. Emerging details paint a harrowing picture. The aircraft reportedly experienced GPS jamming near Grozny, its radar signals vanishing shortly thereafter. Russian officials cited bad weather as the cause of the diversion, but experts suspect military activity and missile damage. Mark Z of OPS Group, an organization monitoring global airspace risks, analyzed images of the aircraft's wreckage and identified fragments consistent with a surface-to-air missile strike. At a high level, we put the probability of it being a SAM attack well into the 90 to 99% bracket, Z stated. Azerbaijan's Digital Development and Transport Minister Rashad Nabiev revealed that survivors heard an explosion near Grozny, and physical evidence, such as small holes in the plane's tail, strongly supports the missile strike theory. On 28 December, Russian President Vladimir Putin apologized to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, offering deep condolences to the victims' families and expressing hope for the swift recovery of the injured. Both leaders agreed on the necessity of a thorough investigation, accountability for those responsible, and compensation for the victims' families. While the tragedy claimed many lives, the courage and professionalism of Captain Kshniakin and First Officer Kalyaninov will be remembered as a beacon of hope amidst the sorrow, a testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity.
Following the tragic crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer 190 near Aktau, several airlines have suspended flights to Russia. Here's a detailed report.
The aviation industry is on high alert after the crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer 190 near Aktau. On December 25th, Flight J28243, traveling from Baku to Grozny, went down during its descent. Of the 67 passengers and crew on board, 38 lost their lives, while 29 survived. Preliminary investigations suggest external interference may have caused the crash, prompting heightened safety measures. In response, several airlines have suspended their services to Russia. Azerbaijan Airlines canceled flights to 10 Russian cities, including Moscow, Mineralnye Vody, Sochi, Volgograd, Ufa, Samara, Grozny, Makhachkala, Saratov, Nizhny Novgorod, and Vladikavkaz. Turkmenistan Airlines suspended all flights between Ashgabat and Moscow from December 30th until January 31st, 2025. Israel's El Al airline temporarily halted flights to Moscow for a week. Kazakh Air from Kazakhstan canceled flights to Yekaterinburg until the end of January. Fly Dubai from the UAE suspended flights to Sochi until January 2, 2025, and to Mineralnye Vody until January 3, 2025. These suspensions reflect growing concerns over air travel safety in the region, as airlines await further clarity on the circumstances surrounding the tragic crash.
The crash of the Azal Flight 8243 is another devastating reminder of the risks posed to civilian aviation in conflict zones. As investigators work to unravel the truth of the tragedy, the spotlight is now on broader implications of aviation safety and regional stability.
On December 25, 2024, Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243, an Embraer 190 en route from Baku to Grozny, tragically crashed near Aktau, Kazakhstan. The accident claimed 38 lives, including both pilots, and left 29 passengers injured. The crash, initially surrounded by uncertainty, has now taken a significant turn as the preliminary investigation strongly suggests the involvement of a surface-to-air missile. The flight departed from Baku at 7:55 local time. Due to dense fog at Grozny airport, the plane was redirected. Reports from the flight's final moments indicate GPS interference near Grozny, a phenomenon previously documented in the region. The aircraft diverted towards Aktau, Kazakhstan, but disappeared from radar at 8:40. It reappeared later, showing erratic altitude and speed changes before attempting an emergency landing near Aktau around 11:30. According to an A-News exclusive, the preliminary investigation confirms that Flight 8243 was likely hit by SAM during its flight over the North Caucasus. Expert analysis and multiple sources suggest shrapnel-like damage on the fuselage, consistent with an air defense missile strike. This conclusion aligns with ongoing regional tensions and heightened Russian military activity due to Ukrainian drone incursions. Matt Borey, Chief Intelligence Officer at Osprey Flight Solutions, told the Wall Street Journal, "Video of the wreckage and the circumstances around the airspace security environment in southwest Russia indicates the possibility the aircraft was hit by some form of anti-craft fire." Justin Crump from Zipline, a risk advisory company, told the BBC Radio 4 it looks very much like the detonation of an air defense missile to the rear and to the left of the aircraft if you look at the pattern of shrapnel that we see. Military expert Jan Matveyev told Euronews that without serious evidence, it is difficult to assume anything other than an anti-craft missile caused the attack. He noted the damage suggests fragments from Pantsir S-1 missile or a similar system with small warheads. Mark Z of OPS Group stated that analysis of the plane's fragments strongly indicates a surface-to-air missile strike, estimating the likelihood at 99%. Kazakhstan is leading the investigation with international support. The aircraft's black box has been recovered and its data is being analyzed. While the Kremlin has cautioned against premature speculation, aviation analysts stress the need for transparency. A spokesperson for Kazakhstan's aviation told earlier, "We are working closely with international partners to ensure that the cause of this crash is identified. Every effort is being made to analyze the black box data and other evidence collected from the crash site." Azerbaijani Minister of Digital Development and Transport Rashad Nabiev, on his part, has said that the plane crash was seemingly caused by what appears to be an external impact and that the investigation team, along with aviation specialists invited for this case, will examine what kind of weapon, or rather, what kind of rocket was used. The crash has sparked global concern. Azerbaijan declared a day of mourning, with President Ilham Aliyev extending condolences to the victims' families. Airlines such as El Al have since reviewed their routes over Russian airspace, underscoring the broader implications for aviation safety. As the investigation progresses, the emerging evidence overwhelmingly supports the theory of SAM strike, potentially due to misidentification amidst regional tensions. A-News continues to monitor the situation, providing expert insights and updates on this developing story.
We would like to remind you that earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin apologized to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev over the recent Aktau plane crash, which left many families grieving and raised serious questions about safety in the region's airspace. The tragic incident occurred on December 25th when an Azerbaijani Airlines passenger plane traveling from Baku to Grozny suffered external physical and technical interference while flying through Russian airspace. The interference caused the crew to lose control of the aircraft, forcing an emergency diversion to Aktau, Kazakhstan. Thanks to the pilot's extraordinary courage and professionalism, the plane was able to land, though not without casualties and significant damage. President Ilham Aliyev noted that the aircraft's fuselage was riddled with holes, and debris from the external interference injured passengers and crew mid-flight. Survivors' accounts and evidence from the scene confirmed the presence of external, unauthorized interference. During the call, the two leaders discussed the urgent need for a comprehensive and transparent investigation. President Putin extended his condolences to the victims' families and promised cooperation to identify and hold those responsible accountable. Both leaders stressed that no effort will be spared to ensure justice, including the provision of compensation to the affected families. President Aliyev informed his counterpart that Azerbaijan has already formed an international team of experts to thoroughly investigate the incident. Both leaders pledged to keep the public informed of the investigation's progress, underlining the importance of transparency in this highly sensitive matter. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says North Korean troops fighting in Russia's Kursk region are encountering heavy losses. Zelensky also urges China to pressure North Korea over its involvement in European battles.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia is sending North Korean troops into battle with minimum protection. This statement comes as Zelensky claims heavy losses on North Korean soldiers fighting in Russia's Kursk region.
There were also details regarding Kursk region, battles involving North Korean soldiers. Their losses are significant, very significant. We see that neither the Russian military nor the North Korean overseers have any interest in ensuring the survival of these North Koreans. Everything is set up so that it is impossible for us to capture them. There are instances where they are executed by their own forces. Russians send them into assaults with minimal protection.
Zelensky also calls on China to use its influence to keep North Korea from participating in European battles.
The Korean people shouldn't lose their lives in battles in Europe. This is something that Korea's neighbors, including China, can influence. If China is sincere in its statements that the war should not expand, then it needs to exert appropriate pressure on Pyongyang.
Zelensky's statements concerning North Korea's losses echo remarks by South Korean Member of Parliament Lee Song-kwon last week, who says North Korean troops are unfamiliar with drone warfare and have been placed in open terrain.
National Intelligence Service reported that there have been at least 100 deaths of North Korean troops, and the injured are approaching 1,000. The National Intelligence Service said that the heavy losses are attributed to North Korean troops' lack of experience in drone warfare, and they were mobilized as frontline stormtroops in open terrain, which they are unfamiliar with.
Meanwhile, North Korea says in a statement that its military alliance with Russia is proving very effective in deterring the United States. However, the statement made no mention of its involvement in the war in Ukraine or the heavy casualties that its troops have taken in combat in the Kursk region. Ukrainian and Western intelligence reports say about 12,000 North Korean troops have been deployed in Kursk. Earlier this week, Zelensky says more than 3,000 of them have either been killed or wounded.
In South Korea, thousands of protesters have gathered in the country's capital, Seoul, to call for the immediate resignation of impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. This comes as the Constitutional Court is set to hold a second hearing next week to review whether to reinstate Yoon or remove him permanently from office.
These are demands for further action. Tens of thousands of people have gathered in South Korea's capital, Seoul, to demand for more action against impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. These protesters are calling for his impeachment to be fully implemented and are also demanding he resigns.
What I want is not only passing the impeachment motion against Yoon Suk-yeol, but also continuing the impeachment process until it's fully implemented. Therefore, I came here to continue to voice my stance.
The impeachment of Yoon Suk-yeol follows his attempts earlier this month to instate martial law. Yoon Suk-yeol was replaced by acting President Han Duck-seo, who also faced a similar fate after declining to appoint 3 justices to fill vacancies at the Constitutional Court. Now, South Korea's Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok assumes the position of acting president, while the cases of Yoon and Han are considered by the Constitutional Court. Analysts believe Choi is headed down the same path because of limitations in the scope of his power.
Choi is acting for the acting president, which means the scope of what he can do has become narrower. And the most important thing is that he's not going to appoint Constitutional Court justices either. He's expected to say he can't do it as he's acting for the acting president. Then he could be impeached too.
South Korea's Constitutional Court is set to hold a second hearing next week to review whether to reinstate Yoon or remove him permanently from office. The court has 180 days to reach a decision.
Georgia gears up for the presidential inauguration scheduled to take place tomorrow. Our Georgian correspondent Leila Rahimli has more.
Today we are witnessing important developments in the country that will shape its political and social landscape. Tomorrow marks the inauguration of Georgia's newly elected president, Mikhail Kevelashvili. Prime Minister Irakli Kabakhidze expressed confidence in Kevelashvili's ability to fulfill his presidential duties with great dignity over the next 5 years. However, the inauguration is being overshadowed by growing public discontent. From the past months, hundreds of thousands of Georgians have been participating in pro-European protests calling for new parliamentary elections and government change. Today at 3 p.m., citizens in Tbilisi and at least 9 other cities joined hands to form chains of unity, symbolizing their demand for a Euro-Atlantic future. Following this event, protesters gathered on Rustaveli Avenue, where police are heavily mobilized to ensure order. President Salome Zurabishvili joined the Human Change Initiative, standing alongside thousands of demonstrators. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Kabakhidze dismissed the protests, comparing them to similar rallies held during Zurabishvili's own inauguration 6 years ago. He criticized the opposition and even the president herself, calling their actions ridiculous. He emphasized that despite the unrest, the inauguration ceremony would proceed as planned tomorrow. Another major development is the imposition of U.S. financial sanctions on Bidzina Ivanishvili, an honorary chairman of ruling Georgian Dream Party, announced yesterday at 8 p.m. Tbilisi time. Ivanishvili's name now appears on the Office of Foreign Assets Control list. According to the U.S. Treasury Department, these sanctions are part of the broader package targeting Russia. The sanctions freeze all of Ivanishvili's assets under U.S. jurisdiction and prohibit American companies and citizens from engaging in financial or commercial activities with him. The U.S. accuses Ivanishvili of advancing Kremlin interests and denying Georgia's European Union aspiration, which they argue contradict the Georgian constitution and the will of its people. Prime Minister Kabakhidze responded by claiming that Ivanishvili has been under de facto sanctions for 3 years, adding that this latest decision changed nothing. He describes that sanctions as a reward for Ivanishvili and Georgia for saving the country and keeping it out of the conflict in Ukraine. Tomorrow is a big day for Georgia. The people don't view the government or the new president as legitimate. Protesters have been ongoing for a month. Zurabishvili, however, refers to herself as the sole legitimate authority and has declared that she will not abandon her duties. As the country faces this critical moment, all eyes are on Georgia to see how these political tensions will unfold and what impact they will have on its future. And that's the latest updates for now. I am Leila Rahimli reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
The United Nations has warned of escalating risks in Syria, with a special envoy stressing the urgent need for inclusive governance and ceasefire efforts. Meanwhile, rebel-led authorities report deadly clashes with pro-Assad forces near Tartus port city.
At the United Nations, Associate Spokesperson Stephanie Tremblay detailed the Security Council's discussions on Syria, highlighting Special Envoy Geir Pedersen's remarks.
He reiterated to members of the Security Council this morning that the key principles of Security Council Resolution 2254 have wide consensus. The transition there should be Syrian-led and owned, ensuring credible, inclusive, and non-sectarian governance, including also constitutional reform, the holding of free and fair election, and the meaningful participation of women.
Tremblay also conveyed Pedersen's deep concerns over potential escalations and called for the immediate cessation of aggression.
Syria's sovereignty, its territorial unity and integrity must be restored, and all acts of aggression must cease immediately.
On the ground, Syria's new rebel-led authorities report that 14 Interior Ministry troops loyal to ousted President Bashar al-Assad were killed near Tartus, with 10 others wounded. The ambush marks an unexpected escalation in Syria, raising fears of further destabilization.
The United Nations Security Council authorized the African Union Support Stabilization Mission in Somalia. This mission will replace the larger African Union anti-terrorism operation starting January 1st, 2025. The United States abstained from the UN Security Council vote, citing financial concerns, while the other 14 members voted in favor of the resolution. Since the conflict with Ethiopia began in 2006, Somalia's security has relied on foreign resources, sparking an insurgency that has claimed thousands of lives. In business and economic news, U.S. holiday sales exceeded expectations this year, driven by generous discounts and last-minute shopping. However, retailers had to get creative to meet the demands of cautious consumers.
The U.S. holiday shopping season saw a 3.8% increase in sales from November 1st to December 24th compared to last year, according to MasterCard Spending Pulse. This rise surpassed earlier projections, showcasing consumer resilience despite stubborn inflation and high interest rates. Retailers described shoppers as selective and conservative, prompting widespread discounts to drive sales. Walmart extended its rollbacks, and Target leaned on promotions to keep customers engaged. Dollar General noted its fourth quarter profits could take a hit due to heavy discounting, while Kroger and Five Below followed suit with price cuts to remain competitive. Online shopping continued to grow at double the pace of physical store sales, underscoring the shift towards digital-first shopping. To meet consumer demands, retailers integrated generative AI for better customer service and refined curbside pickup and delivery options, ensuring a smoother holiday shopping experience.
This holiday season, many Russians are tightening their belts as inflation surpasses 9%, driving up the cost of everyday goods. Wages increases in some sectors have not kept up with the rising prices of food, utilities, and other daily expenses.
As Russia's economic struggles continue under the weight of sanctions and the ongoing war, prices for staples like butter, potatoes, and chicken have risen sharply, with some items becoming up to 30% more expensive in just the past few months. Meanwhile, the ruble remains under pressure, now trading at around 105 rubles to the dollar, making imported goods even pricier. In Omsk, prices have risen sharply, and residents highlight that the amount of products you could buy for $20 is drastically different this year.
Prices have noticeably increased, incomes are sufficient, but when you go to the store, you realize that with 2,000 rubles, you used to be able to buy a lot more.
Residents in Yekaterinburg acknowledge the rising costs but are adjusting to their new reality.
Everything got more expensive. Everybody knows everything, but everything is available. People try to live by their means. Prices are rising. Everything's become more expensive. We cannot influence it. We just live with it and adapt.
In St. Petersburg, even the cost of Christmas trees has become a luxury for many.
There are people that need a tree who don't even ask the price. They just buy one. And there are people who, even when we offer discounts, they say they can't afford it. I wish everyone season's greetings, all the best, and that next year, everyone can afford a tree.
In Moscow, Ordinary goods like bread have seen prices nearly double, with a loaf now costing half of the dollar compared to 20 cents earlier this year.
Public utilities are getting more expensive, taxes are getting higher. It's very noticeable. When you go to the shop, a loaf of bread that once cost 20 rubles now costs 50 rubles. Such things are very well noticed.
Despite real wage growth in sectors like defense and technology, inflation has far outpaced income increases, with prices expected to end the year at 9.8%. Projections suggest inflation will peak in April 2025 before starting to decrease. While the central bank has kept interest rates high at 21%, borrowing costs remain elevated, with mortgage rates reaching as high as 30%, cooling demand in the housing market. With sanctions continuing to limit access to foreign goods and services, Russia's economy remains under significant strain, and the financial challenges for its citizens look set to persist into the new year.
In science and technology news, Turkey has achieved a significant milestone in space technology. Turksat 6A, the nation's first domestically produced communication satellite, has successfully reached its designated orbit. Here's more on the story.
Turksat 6A has settled into its geosynchronous orbit at 42 degrees east, as confirmed by Turkey's Minister of Transport and Infrastructure, Abdulkadir Uraloğlu. The satellite began its journey on 9th of July from SpaceX Cape Canaveral launch site and reached a temporary orbit at 50 degrees east on July 20. After passing rigorous payload tests, the satellite was positioned in its final orbit 35,786 kilometers above Earth on December 27 at 05 Turkey time. Minister Uraloğlu described Turksat 6A as Turkey's largest research and development project, highlighting its significance for the country's space ambitions. Developed with domestic companies such as Aselsan and TÜBİTAK Uzay, Turksat 6A showcases Turkey's capability in satellite production. The satellite expands Turkey's communication coverage to new regions, including Southeast Asia, increasing its global reach from 3.5 billion to over 5 billion people. Turksat 6A solidifies Turkey's position as a regional leader and growing global player in space technology.
Still on space news, NASA's Parker Solar Probe has reached a historic milestone after it completed the closest approach to the Sun ever made. The mission promises to unlock new secrets about our closest star.
NASA's Parker Solar Probe has achieved a groundbreaking milestone, making humanity's closest approach to the Sun yet. The probe flew just 3.8 million miles from the Sun's surface, entering the corona, the Sun's outer atmosphere. NASA confirmed the spacecraft's success with a green beacon signal proving its safe passage through the extreme conditions. Dr. Joe Westlake, NASA's heliophysics director, described the achievement as historic.
Today we got back very late at night, last night about 11:50 p.m. Eastern time. We got back a green beacon from the Parker Solar Probe spacecraft indicating that it successfully completed humanity's closest approach to a star, closest ever flyby to the Sun. And really just an amazing achievement. We were able to actually fly through the upper atmosphere of the corona of the Sun, which is just an amazing thing if you think about it.
Launched in 2018, the Parker probe uses Venus gravity to tighten its orbit. Traveling at an astonishing 400,000 miles per hour, it endures temperatures up to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Westlake added that the spacecraft's prime mission is nearing completion, but its stable orbit ensures extended study.
So we're getting towards the end of its prime mission. The end of its prime mission happens towards the end of this year. But then also, as the solar maximum sort of ramps down, as we continue to get activity off of the Sun, we're going to be wanting to do more and more flybys and hopefully capture some real unique events.
NASA expects detailed data from this historic flyby to begin arriving by January 1st, opening new doors in our understanding of the Sun.
That's all we have for now from Baku. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.